We'll go ahead and get started. It's the 6:30 hour. I would like to read a reminder to everyone before we get started tonight. And so I want to remind everyone that this is an official meeting, and we are acting in our capacity as governing bodies of the city of Milledgeville. Even though we are conducting business a bit differently than usual, we still must respect the task at hand and conduct our meetings as professionally as possible. I would also remind everyone that as we hold our meetings, we try to speak one at a time and to have our devices on mute when not actively speaking. Hopefully, we won't be teleconferencing much longer, but we do have the potential of having to conduct a public hearing under these circumstances, and that will require us to gain public input. This meeting and the next will give us experience as how to conduct such a meeting where there is a potential for a lot of background noise and cross communication. So if you're not talking, if you will, please mute your phones tonight so that we won't have all that background noise and feedback. Having said that, I would like to call the May 12th, 2020 council meeting to order, and I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Reynolds? Mr. Mullins?
Here.
Mr. Chambers?
Here.
Dr. Lee?
Here.
Ms. Walden?
Here.
Ms. Shinholster?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Since we are still not physically assembled, I'm going to ask that we not have the pledge again tonight, but I will ask everyone to just join me in a moment of prayer. Gracious Father, I want to say thank you this evening for your amazing grace and mercy. As we have encountered many trials and tribulations over the last 3.5 months, we know that your word has and is still true, that you would never leave us nor forsake us. So my prayer tonight is simply thank you. Thank you for continuing to shine your face upon us and upon this nation as we continue to help rebuild through leadership across the nation. Keep those who have been stricken with this virus in your loving care. I ask that you continue to care for all our frontline workers, as well as those who walked through the shadow of darkness. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Tonight, you all have received a copy of your April 28th, 2020 council meeting minutes. Are there any corrections? Do I hear a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Mullins?
Aye.
Mr. Chambers?
Aye.
Dr. Lee?
Aye.
Mrs. Walden?
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. There is no business on the agenda tonight, so I will move to new business. Old business. So I'll move to new business. We have one resolution to consider, and I'll ask the clerk to please read the resolution, R2005-25 by caption.
Yes, ma'am. A resolution to authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Baldwin County Board of Commissioners to provide assistance with a Georgia Department of Transportation Local Administered Project, LAP, Certified Project PI 270900 to aid with the Barrows Ferry Road bridge replacement at the crossing over Tobler Creek.
You have heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Move with.
Is there any
Second.
discussion on the? Did you get that, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, ma'am. I have the motion made by Dr. Lee and seconded by Mr. Chambers.
Is there any discussion on the proposed resolution?
I have
one question: when would this take place? Projected timeline of getting started on the project.
The project is set to start acquiring right-of-way in June of 2020, and the original let date was actually November of 2020, but well, let me back up and say the original right-of-way acquisition date was October of 2019, and it was moved out due to some various delays on part of GDOT, and so that moved the right-of-way acquisition to June of 2020, which then moved the let date out to March of 2021. The reason we will be utilizing the county in this process is the person with the government entity who is responsible for right-of-way acquisition for the local government has to be LAP certified, and Tim Thomas has completed all of his courses but one to be LAP certified, and he will not be able to complete that course until August. And with right-of-way acquisition starting in June, GDOT asked us to enter into the IGA with the county because the county is a local project certified agency, and County Manager Tovar is a local assistance project certified for GDOT. So that's the reason we are requesting them. They are not charging us any administrative cost. Obviously, we will bear the cost of right-of-way acquisition that includes actual purchase of the property, legal fees, and those things that are associated with that. We also, just as an aside, we also have a water line and a sewer line that we'll have to move for this project.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this proposed resolution? Okay, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mrs. Walden,
Aye.
Mrs. Shinholster.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We don't have any appointments to make or alcohol license applications to consider tonight. But at this time, I will recognize the city manager for his report. Mr. Haynes?
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, I do not normally do a city manager's report during our regular council meetings, but in the absence of work sessions based on the fact that we are still teleconferencing, I did want to share with you just some information pieces and see if you had any questions associated with those. I emailed most of this information to you yesterday, but want to go over it again fairly quickly to see if you have any questions. First of all, in terms of city facilities and staff operations, as we continue to do business through our COVID pandemic operations plan, we will continue business as we are currently doing it, which is phase 3 of our plan through the end of this week. So through the end of business on Friday, we will continue to do as we have done for about the last 4 weeks now, and that is no face-to-face business, drive-through open in the business office, drop box open in the business office. Actually, let me back up and say we have done a little bit of face-to-face business during this time, and that simply has been a situation of building permits being run downstairs and handed off to those people who have applied and received those from that office. But other than that, with the exception of payments and applications for new utility services, everything else has been done through
teleconferencing and Zoom meetings, and we will continue that through the end of Friday. On May 18th, which is next Monday, we will revert back to phase 2 of our pandemic response plan, and that will be all of the doors will remain closed and locked, with the exception of the business office door. Individuals will begin to come in to the business office as they did during the first 2 weeks that we had our facilities closed to walk-in traffic. We will utilize the cashier's windows in the business office to do face-to-face meetings with people should we need to do that. And obviously with that area opening back up, we will be again start taking payment for utility services through the business office, as well as face-to-face meetings for the start of new services. We will be setting up that lobby area in a manner that social distancing will be practiced, and even to the point of requiring fewer people in that lobby area, both inside the cashier's area and in the lobby area. I don't anticipate we will have a real issue. We may actually have to have someone at the door on the 25th, which is the day that we oftentimes get a lot of utility payments. So we will see how things go from there on the 25th. We will maintain this procedure until June 12th. June 12th was chosen because right now that is the expiration of the governor's latest public health state of emergency. And so that's kind of the date that we're working toward. The rental of city facilities, including parks and meeting and conference spaces, will remain suspended through June 12th as well. The city attorney, municipal court judge, and police chief will work on the schedule to resume municipal court, and that will be based on guidelines associated with the judicial emergency that's been issued by Chief Justice Melton. And I would like to continue having our council meetings through teleconference, at least through the last meeting of this month, which will be the last scheduled meeting, which will be the 26th. We can talk about that a little bit more when we start talking about and discussing budget dates and processes. The governor had a news conference today at 4. He really did not change a whole lot of areas, with the exception of he is now allowing a greater density of people in restaurants with this newest executive order. And he has covered some information in terms of ramped up testing for those people in nursing homes and assisted living areas, and that kind of thing. I watched the news conference. I have printed off his 30-page executive order for my enjoyable reading tonight when I get home, and I will send you all a summary of that via email in the morning. So with that said, let me ask if there are any questions about how we plan to proceed between now and June 12th in terms of facilities and staff operations. Okay, silence is golden, so that's a good thing. All right, budget dates and processes. As you all know, we left Athens after our planning retreat with a wonderful budget adoption schedule. And I was really excited about that schedule. I saw us having the opportunity to really work through the budget and maybe even get it to the point where we maybe had it passed in May and could just let it sit on the shelf until July 1. Obviously, that has our plans have changed based on the COVID pandemic, and so Bo and I and Shay have looked at the budget schedule that we can follow to still have passage of a budget by July 1. And to me, it really hinges on making a decision on one thing, and that is when you all would like to have the budget presented to you. My plan is to do a more formal initial budget presentation than I think mayor and council have had in the past. So on the day that it's presented, I would present that information to you and give you a 10 to 15 minute actual oral presentation, sharing with you the areas of the budget that changed from the previous year and why those changes are recommended. And then you would have time to take it and digest it on your own, and then we could come back in work sessions as we've done in the past and discuss it. The two options are to either have a call budget work session on May 19th, which would be a week from tonight, for me to present the budget to you all, or we could have a called budget work session prior to the regular council meeting on May 26th. The biggest difference, obviously, is that gives you a week less to digest it. But then everything else kind of remains the same after that. I believe we have enough dates left where we can have some call work sessions, maybe just concentrating on Tuesdays, since that's when we're kind of used to meeting, and still be in a position where we can have a regular first read and public hearing at our regular work session regular council meeting June 9th, and then hopefully a second read and adoption on June 23rd. I'm good with either. I will yield to your pleasure on that as to whether you want to have a call work session on May 19th for presentation of the budget, or to do a call work session prior to our regular scheduled meeting on May 26th.
May 19th is fine with me.
I think
Me also.
too. I
Yeah.
think May 19th we need to. That would give us an extra week if we have questions and things to talk to you about.
Yeah, I would very much like to do it on the 19th personally, and then y'all have a week to digest it, and us go ahead and schedule
Yeah.
a called work
Yeah.
session on the 6th too, and the purpose of that call work session would be to discuss the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have you got the entities and what have you? Have you got all of theirs where they have
We do.
presented them
Yes,
to you
ma'am.
to give to us?
Yes, ma'am, we do, and those
Okay.
those will be in your packet. And what I would actually
Okay.
like to do is, if we present it on the 19th, I would like for a portion of that call work session on the 26th to be those outside agencies sharing with you why they want their budget request to be what it is. I'll just tell you that none of them have requested an increase, so I think their presentations would be fairly straightforward, but I would like to give you all the opportunity to ask them any questions if you had them, if that's all right with y'all.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, Hank,
Okay.
let me speak to one thing relative to our meetings via teleconferencing or video conferencing.
Okay.
When mayor and council adopted that resolution, which was R-2003-15, that was for a 60-day period.
Right.
I believe that was adopted on March the 22nd, which would cover the May 19th meeting. But if there's some thought that the proposed work session and regular session of May the 26th meeting would be by teleconferencing, then I think on May the 19th, in addition to having the work session, council should be prepared to adopt an extension of that resolution R-2003-15. You can make that call at that time as to whether you're planning on meeting in person or meeting via teleconferencing on the 26th. You could actually make that call tonight. You'd have to amend the agenda and so forth to extend that resolution, but it may be, equally efficient to wait till the May 19th and see what council's pleasure is as far as extending that teleconferencing relative to the state of emergency.
Okay.
The state of emergency, the other resolution that was adopted, which I believe was R-2003-16, does not have a expiration date. It simply, I think, states that the provisions that we adopted, many of them, of course, have been usurped by the governor's executive orders, but the actual declaring of the state of emergency, that remains in place until it is lifted. But with regards to the resolution concerning the teleconferencing or video conferencing, that will expire on or about, probably will expire on May the 21st, I suspect. So May 21st or 22nd, but 60 days from the 22nd would probably be May 21st. So probably need to put on the agenda for the 19th a consideration of extending that, and then council can decide at that point whether or not that is what they want to do. That's all I have.
I have a question for Mr. Griffin. Is there any way that, I know there's a way, but I'm thinking about the way the council chambers are set up, even for our next meeting, with the proper mask and with placing everybody in a social distance away from each other, with all the chairs in the council chambers and plus the area up front where we sit. Couldn't we have a meeting set up that way?
I think we could.
Wouldn't our 19th meeting be one that we needed to all be there for you to give us the budget and everything?
Well, we could certainly.
That's the one that I'm talking about, setting up that way.
If we're going to start those face-to-face meetings, I think the 19th would be a good time for that to happen. My concern with face-to-face meetings has always been the gallery more so than you all. But I think even if we limit it to 50% of the fire marshal capacity on gallery, we'll still probably be okay. And I am more than happy to do what's necessary to be able to have that meeting in the council chambers on the 19th, if by making sure that social distancing is adhered to and PPE is provided to you, if that's what you all would like to do.
What time would we have it? What time do you think we need to do it on the 19th?
I'm thinking 5:30, which is what we typically do with work sessions.
That'll give us. Yeah. Okay.
Also, too, if when we do open up our meetings back to, like you said, limiting the number of people that come into the gallery, then I think that we should also maybe establish some guidelines so that everyone will know that when they enter into the facility that they have to have on the proper protective equipment.
I agree. One of the things that I'm looking at, just purely from a day-to-day city operation is the potential for infrared thermometers. And you all remember when we initially went into the pandemic operation plan, we still had the doors open, but we were having people sign in when they came in. I'm looking into the possibility of seeing if infrared thermometers can be secured, and we would again have people sign in, and we would actually do a temperature reading on them to possibly recommend that they come back on another day. But I think that's
Hank, I think that's a good idea. I've been living in that world since March.
I bet you have. Well, I'm fine with doing the budget presentation work session on the 19th at 5:30 in council chambers. If that's good with everyone else.
I'm good with it.
I'm good.
Okay. 5:30, okay with everybody?
Yeah.
It would be just us, right?
Well, the fact that it's an open meeting, we would have people in the gallery, but I don't anticipate it would be enough that we could not easily social distance ourselves or away from those people that are in the gallery. We obviously will pull chairs out, make sure that there's 6 feet between each chair, and that would easily create the potential for us only having 50% of the maximum fire occupancy in the room.
And keep in mind, too, that under our current resolution and so forth, anybody that did not want to attend in person could still participate the teleconferencing and still be considered present and be able to participate in the meeting.
And that would not count towards their maximum for the year, correct, Jimmy?
Yeah, not for the 19th, and we have to
Right.
decide. I think on the 19th, council's got to decide, and they may very well want to give consideration to extending this resolution for a variety of reasons. One, if circumstances worsen, okay, hopefully that will not be the case, but if that were. And two, with individual council members having their own personal situations that they're dealing with at home and so forth relative to this disease and the sheltering in place, they would have the option to do that, and it would not count against what would normally be their 2 teleconferencing meetings a year. So you probably do want to, at that 19th meeting, May 19th meeting, you probably do want to extend this resolution for a certain period of time, whether it's 30 more days or 60 more days. This resolution does not prevent you from gathering at City Hall to meet, but it does give the body as a whole, as well as individual members, the option of not being there in person, just depending on what their own personal situations are, which they don't have to disclose under this resolution as it's drafted.
And what we would need to do on the 19th, Jimmy, is after the work session, we would need to go into a called full session in order to extend that. Correct?
Well, I think that you can just simply place it on, if you're going to have an agenda, obviously you are for the work session. I think that agenda can include an extension of this resolution. Okay. And we will basically, in this context, I don't know if there's much difference, if any, between the work session and the regular meeting, because you're going to be meeting in council chambers. I assume that you would be on our television feed, because that is the way to safeguard this idea of social distancing in the gallery. And just by chance, which, probably is not the case, but just by chance, we get an overflow of folks wanting to be present, we are protected. Our fallback is that it is being televised. So I would definitely recommend, if we're going to proceed to an in-person, either all of Mayor and Council or a portion of Mayor and Council are going to proceed in person at City Hall, that it be televised, and then we treat it accordingly, and so that we can put on that quote-unquote work session agenda the extension of this resolution R-2003-15. And then I think we're covered at that point. We're going to need to, if we're going to meet in person, whether it's labeled as a work session or as a regular session, we're going to need that television broadcast, as we typically would do for our regular meetings, so that we have complied with the open meetings law in the unlikely event that through social distancing we are required to prevent people from attending the meeting.
Okay.
Again, I don't think that's realistically, that's not going to happen, I wouldn't think. But by doing this, we cover our selves, and we make that meeting available to anyone who would otherwise want to attend, but either can't because we don't have enough room, or they are presented with a situation where they simply cannot attend. And I think that covers us. So that's how I would recommend that we proceed, is on the May 19th meeting, we include this extension of resolution for however much period of time council pleasure is, but that we put it on that agenda and proceed accordingly.
Okay. So anyone who wishes could, under the current resolution, anyone who wishes could call in by teleconference for the May 19th meeting, and then once we extend that availability continues for the timeline of the extension of that resolution, and it does not go against their maximum of 2 per year for called-in meetings.
Correct, and we could actually extend it. For the period of time that we remain under the state of emergency, or we could just decide we're going to extend it for another 60 days. We don't have to operate for that. It doesn't change the way that mayor and council can come together if they so choose in a particular meeting. Obviously, these budget meetings probably work better when everybody's in the room together. But if somebody, for whatever reason, can't be, they're still fully present, participating. And so, my recommendation would probably be to continue this resolution for another 60 days. And, if things change and you want to cut it short, Mayor and Council always has that prerogative. But that's how I think I would set it up, from that standpoint.
Okay. Everybody good with that, in principle, and we'll consider that on the 19th?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm good with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what we can do for anyone who wishes to call in for the meeting on the 19th, we could make sure that you all had hard copies of what I was presenting prior to that actual meeting, so you'll be able to have those to see what's being presented. Not only the budget, but probably some graphic details that I'll have as well. All right, good. The last thing that I wanted to bring up in terms of I think major discussion is at our meeting on April 28th, we had a little discussion about sidewalk dining, and I told you all that I would do some research and put together some information. You all have the information that I sent you in the email in terms of the number of restaurants that have the potential for having sidewalk dining if we utilize 36 inches as the minimum necessary for ADA passage. There's a couple of different numbers floating around out there for ADA passage, and it can be anywhere from 36 inches to 60 inches, depending on whether it's new construction or rehab construction or existing construction. So 36 inches, I think, is a good distance for us to look at. With that being the case, there were 8 restaurants that, if you maintain the 36-inch passage, they would only have 24 inches for sidewalk dining space. All of those, I believe, let me look at my list here, all of those would be on the south side of the 100 block of West Hancock. So that could be an issue for them, because I don't know that 24 inches would be enough for them to be able to have any space. Everybody else, quite frankly, downtown, could probably easily do it. The next the next distance that you would have after maintaining the 36-inch ADA requirement would be 48 inches, and then you've got one for 72 inches, 2 with 84 inches, and then 3 restaurants that actually have 11 feet for sidewalk dining space, even if you maintain the 3 feet. So the other thing with West Hancock Street is obviously we would need to request temporary permission from the Department of Transportation. That is state route right away there. The research that I did in terms of communities that are doing this, the most readily available information was from Brookhaven and from Alpharetta. Some of you may remember that Brookhaven was one of the first cities to step up and put in place some pretty stringent requirements for essential and non-essential businesses way back about the middle of March. And once things began to open up, they looked at temporary outdoor restaurant operations and have a very straightforward application, which is certainly something we could utilize. Basically, for them, you have to provide 24-hour contact information. You have to provide a site plan detailing the layout of the proposed outdoor operation, and you have to have permission of the property owner. The other city that had information that was very readily available was Alpharetta, and they also have an application and a permitting process for temporary outdoor operations. Contains very much the same information that Brookhaven's does. The one thing that Alpharetta did that Brookhaven did not do in terms of their printed information is Alpharetta stated that there could be dining opportunities within the public sidewalk as long as a minimum of 42-inch path remained open. So that was the measurement that they used. Brookhaven also put some information in their areas about minimum and maximum sizes of furniture and those kinds of things. I will tell you that I talked with the city manager of Brookhaven and did some email correspondence with folks in Alpharetta. Brookhaven especially said that when they did theirs, they were thinking more along the lines of the availability of parking lots and green space and those kinds of things downtown, and that they would not approve anyone for sidewalk dining that was infringing on the ADA required space. So they were looking at that as well, even though they didn't actually put it in their printed information. So to me, it appears that we've got two choices. We allow anybody that's interested in this to provide an application and a sketch, and we see if they can meet the requirements that we put forth of maintaining that 36-inch ADA space. And that, to me, seems like it would be the fairest way to do it. Or we could just simply not allow anybody to do it, let that be the cross-the-board decision. But I'm fine with going either route that you all would like to go. If we do decide to do an application process, what I would do is prior to making the application available, I would obviously ask you all to pass a resolution associated with that, and I would also contact Department of Transportation to see if it would be possible to get a temporary approval to do this on the 100 block of Hancock Street. With that, I'll take any questions or entertain any discussion associated with that.
I've got one question, that is the length of time that you're thinking about as far as temporary. Are we looking at going right on up until a proposed start of school or something of that nature? No need in my way of thinking to do it for a 4-week period or anything of that nature. Extend it out long enough to where it makes a difference.
City of Alpharetta's permit was valid until July 31st, 2020. Brookhaven's was effective for 90 days from the time that they provided this as an option, which was on April 20th. Brookhaven did tell me that, April 27th. Brookhaven did tell me that they had not yet had any applications for any of their areas. Alpharetta said that their applications were coming in fairly slowly, although they just released theirs on May 4th. But I think in order to make it worthwhile, we probably need to at least go until July 31st.
So the business,
certainly not,
Mr. Haynes,
not
that are
opposed to going to August 15th if that's what y'all want to do. I'm sorry, I ran over somebody.
okay. So the business that are operational at this particular time, are they not? This is not fluid for them at this present time without having to do that, or how are the businesses going so far that you've talked with?
Well, so far the only ones that I'm aware of in terms of downtown that have gone back to full operation only did that yesterday, and that is Amici and Buffington, and I have not had a conversation with them since they reopened. I know that there's some others looking to reopen on Thursday, and then some others are looking to reopen on Monday. With the changes in the governor's order enabling more density in the indoor dining, this may not matter at this point in time, but it still could to some of them, depending on how large or how small their dining rooms are.
Hank, I have a question.
Okay.
When you mentioned the restaurants that are on the south side of West Hancock Street, I know we had talked about trying. I know some of those would probably really be concerned since they will not be allowed. They don't have the space to do that. Is there any other area in downtown that we could possibly look at setting out tables along a wider sidewalk where we can say, well, if there's not enough room here, they can always walk here because in the downtown area to sit. Have you thought about that?
I think there are some other areas that we could look at that. I think we could easily, without it interfering with parking very much in the coming 60 days, we could even look at doing providing space for tables in the bottom part of the parking deck. We could look at the potential for utilizing some of the parking space behind City Hall here. We could look at utilizing the lot next door to the post office. I think there's a number of places that we could look at the potential for making them available to those businesses if they had any interest in traversing that far with the food. I think we could easily do that.
Well, I honestly think that, right now people just want to be able to get out and sit down and eat. So I don't think the restaurants would have any problems with fixing food to go if there was a place. And then I honestly don't think the people that want to eat out and eat outside will have any problems walking to an area where they can sit down with their, in the open and, have a meal for a change.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about, people doing curbside pickup and then being able to go to an outdoor table somewhere to eat. You're not necessarily talking about them being served by the people at that restaurant as much as you are talking about them being able to pick up food and actually go somewhere and be able to eat it.
Right. I'm just thinking about the revenue for the restaurants and,
right.
and us being able to provide somewhere for people to sit down and enjoy a meal away from home for a change.
I guess my biggest question on that piece would be, we could certainly provide the space. We would have to consider what we could provide in terms of furnishings, because we don't have the furnishings necessary. But if the restaurants had interest in putting some of their tables in those spaces, we could certainly do that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Since they have to, if they had dining on the sidewalk in front of their restaurant, they have to provide tables and furniture. So why not in another area?
Okay. Well, why don't I do this? Why don't I ask Carly to contact the merchants downtown and just get a feel for them about the space that might not necessarily be right in front of their restaurant, and if they are interested in using that space, would they be able to provide some furniture in that space during the time that it's needed?
I think that's a good idea.
Add public works, and put a public work person out there to be on post for as trash pickup and all that stuff, or what are you suggesting?
We would make sure there were some cans out there that Public Works would pick up every day. We could utilize some of the cans that we have that are set up during deep roots and that kind of thing, and make sure that they're set up, and Public Works could pick those up each day. Ms. Shinholst, are you looking at doing this in conjunction with an application process that those who could meet the distance requirements could apply for, or just doing this only?
No, I was thinking that those businesses that wanted to participate, they would have to apply as well. But that would give, like you said, if Carly kind of told the merchants and find out if they would be agreeable to that, they will have to be committed to, making sure that sometimes, they're making sure that their furniture is provided, and that, maybe perhaps that we're not responsible for their furniture in those areas.
Okay.
Hank, I think one thing that you may want to think about, and this kind of expands a little bit more on what Ms. Shinholst was speaking to, but that those that want to participate that may not meet the ADA requirements, that they be able to market what they're able to do as far as the curbside pickup and everything, and also market those areas, whichever area we end up making available, but also making that available for any restaurant downtown, whether they could comply and just chose not to put tables out or not have any outside dining or whatever. My concern about everything that we do is that we're making decisions, or going to start to make decisions predicated on the fact that we think everything's going to continue to get better, and that's certainly what we hope for. But I think we also have to keep in mind, what if that's not the case, and how do we try to think along both lines of thinking as we proceed.
Okay.
Well, I think it would be a great idea to let everybody know that all of this is contingent upon us, like Steve said, moving towards things getting better. And in the event that things turn around and we have to go back to the shelter in place, and I mean, that in addition to everything else that we've been doing for the past 30 days or so, then everybody has to understand that we can always go back and create those resolutions along with whatever the governor puts out to go back to where we were. So it's a temporary solution. I guess that's what I'm saying, is that, everybody should be aware this is a temporary solution to maybe help them with their revenue issues, as well as to try to get some people back to work. And at the same time, too, we have to keep in mind that we are going to probably have to provide some type of monitoring to make sure that we don't end up with overcrowded areas as well, that people that sit in those areas always have to be seated, that you don't have a whole lot of people just standing around just to be able to gather together and not practicing social distancing. So all of that has to be taken into consideration, whatever we set up.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking during the course of our conversation that, we would need to put some rules in place about the areas would be provided for eating only, and not just general meetings. We're obviously going to have some monitoring to make sure that there's no open containers,
because that could be something that we have to deal with. So there will be some monitoring associated with it, maybe even some additional costs from a law enforcement standpoint to have some folks down there all the time if they start being used regularly. I'm certainly
also,
willing
too, that includes some hours of operation, too.
Right. Well, I would anticipate, and this is just purely an assumption on my part, but I would anticipate that if restaurants put furniture out there, they're probably going to want to bring it in at night. And so that might kind of naturally create some operating hours. What I've seen so far, Amici and Buffington, both have opened from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. I believe some of the others that are looking at opening later in the week are looking at only doing maybe Thursday through Saturday dinner hours right now until they get back on their feet a little bit better and maybe have a situation where they can have a little more people in the restaurant. But I'll work with Carly to find out what the interest is here, and we can. Jimmy, I'm assuming it would be okay for us to put this on the May 19th agenda as well.
Yes, I think so. I think anything that, with the way we're going to conduct that meeting, that anything that requires official action by council can be put on that agenda.
Okay. What I will do, Mayor and Council, is I will email you all our findings, and a recommended plan based on the interest that we have found, and we can consider that, and if maybe even have a resolution written up to be considered on May 19th. Any other questions or comments on sidewalk dining or parking lot dining or wherever dining happens to take place? All right, the only other thing I have to share with you is that I wanted to let you all know that the transition on the part of the water system that will be conveyed to the county based on our service delivery agreement. We had actually had an initial meeting. When I say we, it was myself, Robert Haddon, Kevin Beal for the city, Dawn Hudson, Carlos Tobar, and Jason Kidd for the county. We had an initial meeting back in late February to kind of lay out a plan for that. That ended up obviously being delayed. We met again last week, and one of the things that came out of that meeting, and I think this is going to be advantageous for the city, is we will actually look at starting the 365-day transition clock for transferring of those customers that are being conveyed to the county. That clock will start July 1. So between now and then, account information will be shared with the county, and the potential for how they're going to feed. One of the things that came out of the discussion was that they felt like that they might need our water more on the south side of the county than on the north side of the county that they were taking over. And I shared with them that it really did not matter to us where they utilized the water. They just had that minimum amount of water to purchase. And so they may have the potential to be able to serve the customers
in the area that that we are conveying to them, and then utilize the water that they're purchasing from us on the south end of their system. But that clock will start July 1, and if you remember from the IGA that was part of service delivery, they will take ownership and pay for at least 25% of the customer base and infrastructure each quarter for a year. So at the end of the year, they have taken over 100% of the customer base and the infrastructure and paid us the total amount that they owe us for those customers and infrastructure as per the service delivery IGA. I will continue to keep you updated on that in terms of how that process goes, and we'll certainly let you know when the first part of that first 25% of that is transferred over. But I'm going to keep you informed long before that ever happens in terms of how the process is proceeding. I'm also, just as a point of information, I'm also tracking SPLOST revenue proceeds. That information is readily available from the Georgia Department of Revenue, and at some point in time I will share with you all what those collections have been since the beginning of this current SPLOST, and I think we all understand that is going to be greatly reduced in the next reporting. April, the numbers that were reported in April were still very strong, but of course that was numbers that probably came from the end of February and through about the middle of March. So I anticipate numbers that are reported in May will be greatly reduced, and probably will be reduced for 2 or 3 reporting periods. Any questions for me on anything we've talked about or anything else?
No, everything was thoroughly explained. Thank you.
I just sat here looking at the fact that we had an hour and 5-minute meeting, and most of that was my talking. I'm so sorry for that, but at least
it's all good. All good.
All right, Mr. Griffith. So if you're done,
I am. Thank you.
Is there any further business? Thank you for your report, Mr. Griffith. Is there any further business to discuss? Well, in closing, I would like to say Mayor and Council are continuing to ask that everyone continue to be safe, continue to mask, and follow CDC guidelines. So, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Meeting adjourned.